Can you
Chicago.
identify that one? That
That's Chicago.
looks like it was
Chicago.
also taken in Chicago. That's Fred and Frank. That's nice to see. I hadn't seen that
It's the
before.
same old weeds,
Just wondered what it was. That's in the back of the apartment building, probably. Oh, four brothers
Four
there.
brothers.
I don't think so. It doesn't look like it.
Jim, Tom, Frank, and Fred. They fell in Chicago during the war.
Humpy and thin.
So that
That's
was
when
what,
they-
1945?
When everybody came out of the camp,
Went to camp, went
and
to
They
relocated.
were still thin. Yeah.
I guess I had just finished my basic training, I guess. I went to Chicago.
Oh,
When you were at Stelling? Is that where you
Yeah, I
were?
was at Snelling, but I got gone to Fort McClellan, Alabama, for my basic.
visit Tats
You're on your way to
and
Stelling.
May
May
and
and the
Ruth
kids.
and Billy.
Bill.
No, that was in Los Angeles then. So, what did that, they said 36?
That-
Yeah, they were.
1936.
Oh,
Yeah, there they are.
Oh, this is in San Gabriel in front of our house. I guess Ruth and Billy were visiting. That's, oh, that's cute.
37.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's my dad, Frank, and my mother, Margaret, and three of us girls, Dorothy, Joan, and myself, Marilyn.
I know that's my mom and dad's wedding in, I believe it's 1939, Tom and Mary. 39, does that sound right?
And I was best man.
Yeah. Jim is there and Mary's sister Hannah.
Yeah.
Knocking on now.
I went to go for them because I remember I had to get some needles, pins
Oh,
to
did you?
hold the corsage up.
Oh. That's Hannah
And
and Jim and Dad.
Chicago.
Was that Chicago? No, you look too young there. No, no.
Somewhere cool.
That's a pre-war, that's a pre-war picture.
Pre-war.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of,
Looks like a picture of Dave when he was really young. I guess this one was taken when he just graduated from high school. Of course, I didn't know him at that time. Do we?
oh, that's Ruthie.
That's your feet?
Ruth Sato Ota. Isn't she cute? And that was probably in Los Angeles by their house on 28th Street.
Was everyone living together in the same place in Chicago? Were they living in the same building or? Do you remember? Chicago? Were you all living in the same
Oh,
place?
there were several, where your dad,
Uh-huh.
Greg, was living?
Just for a while we did. We lived there until we got settled and bought our own apartment house.
On Clark Street in Chicago.
Good place.
And that's,
So she got an apartment. We were German.
Doug's
No, we were.
parents, Frank and Hannah, you know him, Jim.
There's the kid.
And there's the kid, Doug. Isn't that cute? Chubby little guy. This is David's picture. I believe he re-enlisted after he came back from Europe. His first hitch, and he re-enlisted, and he was at Camp Campbell. Is it Camp? Or Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Fort Campbell.
That's when we just,
This is the withholding W-2 for Chilton for wages earned for the year 1944 was $757.46. We paid the great sum of $82 tax. And that's a picture taken at work at Wesley Memorial. He worked in the kitchen preparing
he
vegetables.
was in charge of the fresh vegetables.
Prepping it.
How old was he?
Around 75 years, in the 70s. They didn't know he was that old when they hired him.
He had to quit when he had a stroke at 81. And when he recovered, he wanted to go back to work at 82.
I took care of him when he first had his stroke.
And that's Mary and Tom. And Raj.
This is the camp, isn't it?
43.
This is he, I believe.
This is how you went to camp around it.
In camp?
Is that building a camp building? I don't
No,
know. It doesn't look like a camp building. I think they must have been out.
It says 1943 on the side.
Did they go to Heart Mountain?
Roger, on
No.
3 years.
Gila River, Arizona.
Oh, they did?
The other extreme, where it was so hot.
But they had vegetables and everything that we didn't have. Remember at first?
Oh, my
Up there in
goodness.
Hartman.
And that is?
This was in Jerome, Arkansas during the war. And that's my mother on the right, Marilyn, my sister Joan, and myself, Bertha. I was in the 40s.
Cute. And?
It's my dad, Frank, you know, and me, and that should be in Jerome. I think this was, obviously winter. I don't know what year.
I didn't know it snowed.
43 or so.
I had a lot of fun.
I knew it, the humidity was really terrible in Jerome.
I remember that. Had a great time.
Yeah,
Is
no
that-
cares for that age.
I've never heard of it yet, I did not.
Oh, it's my dad, Frank, on the left bottom. He was a honorary volunteer for the fire department
In camp.
in camp. I believe it's Roar. Or I mean Jerome.
Oh, I've never seen that
Yeah.
picture.
Well,
That's,
this is at Heart Mountain. Tad, Jim, and David when he came to visit.
611B.
Auntie Tony, were you married then?
What's in that year?
1940.
This is-
Fire.
That's Frank with the leave on the fire engine and with our dog Mary. He went to the forest one day, I guess, you know, because in those days the men didn't have much to do and they used to go out and find the kobus on the trees, the growths, and they used to cut them and bring them back, and the dog just followed him home. So we kept her.
That's a beach party that the family had. That's Toshi with Philip on her lap, and there's Doug and Roger and Mary, their mother, Roger's mother.
Was this during the war?
I believe it was White Point.
White Point, huh, shit.
Mhm.
Have you let you go
That's
to the
Hannah.
beach?
That's Hannah.
This would have to be after the war.
After the war?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, after
Philip
the
was
war.
born after.
Mm.
Oh, 611 B.
Little B, it's Tony and Ted and Dawn.
Carol wasn't born that time?
No.
So 611B means what?
That was the barrack and the room and the unit. The
Block 6.
Block 6, building 11, unit B.
No. just-
And we were, had adjoining units. Tommy and Tad were on the N unit, and the three, Dave, Bill, and Jim and I were in the next larger unit, being 3 men and 1 woman. We had more space, so I could have a little separate.
How many units were there? Were there
6.
6?
2, 2, 2.
That first unit was so
Yeah, we
tiny.
had-
Can we see, I wanted to know how
The-
many units there were in Hot Mountain. So.
Yeah, where that step is, entryway, you entered and then it divided a little vestibule, like
According
separated
to this, I
into
can
2.
only see 4.
Because the weather was so severe in Heart Mountain, that first year, winter, we were there in 1942, it was minus 29 degrees.
See, there's no insulation, just that,
Yeah.
and that you could see the width of our room, just that part there is just enough for, you know, the width is just
Yeah.
barely for the 3.
How
They
did you
put
keep
in-
warm?
They put in Celotex insulation after we occupied it, when they realized that, you know, wind and everything, dust was coming through, and the cold, they started installing the Celotex sheeting interior insulation after we were there. And the blizzards were so severe that the snowdrifts would go as high as the eaves in some areas, you know, where the wind would blow for days. I remember on the train trip from Pomona Assembly Center, we were housed in barracks on the Pomona Fairground parking lot was transformed into Assembly Center. We lived in barracks there for 3 months before we were sent by train on different contingents of groups were sent. And my particular group took 4 days and 3 nights to go from Pomona to Wyoming. And Tomie was on the same train, but in a separate car. She had, the 3 of them rode in this chair car, which could not be converted to lying down. She had Donald, who was only, what, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, and fearful of letting him down, to be afraid that he would fall in between the cars. So she really had a tough time. We at least could take our seats apart and lie down. That was March 44, when Bill and I, Dorothy, left for Chicago. We left together. That's Tomie and Tad Nagai. We had to go up to Montana, Billings, Montana, to catch the train to Chicago. And being wartime, the trains were packed with a lot of servicemen, and Bill didn't have a seat to sit on. He sat on his suitcase most of the way to Chicago.
Yeah, the only reason for that, Dorothy had a good seat because these servicemen offered her a seat. She was a young girl then.
Oh, my.
You remember that?
I don't remember, but I remember I got to sit down. And poor Bill sat on his suitcase. Oh, that's Roger.
That's Roger.
In Chicago.
And Bill.
And Bill must have come after his basic training or
Where was
something.
that?
No stripes yet.
I mean, who's the building? What's the building?
This
Where
was,
was
the apartment?
must have been where you lived, because that wasn't where we lived.
Oh, really?
That is so
No, that wasn't on Clark Street.
No. I don't know where it's.
Oh, there's where Carol was born. We left when she was a year old because she didn't get any shots. By that time, all the doctors mostly have left the camp, and she hadn't had her shots in a year, so we decided we'd better take care of that, and we left camp after that.
This is in Gila camp.
You know,
and,
you know, Pop, Dad golfing. Tom used to play golf with Dad sometimes, and I think the reason he quit because Dad would beat him.
I think I still have his wooden golf clubs in the garage.
So when did he start playing golf?
In camp, he learned, you know, Isays never took vacations. They had very little time for fun. So he took up golf, and he was in his 70s here. That picture, estimate he was about, what, 72?
When he was working at that hospital, he'd go out with the doctors.
Oh, really?
Doctors would take him out to play golf.
Well, he took me out in Chicago on the golf course for the first time in my life. Went out on the golf course and hit every sand trap in the place at Lincoln Park. And I didn't play again until 50 years later with Jonathan.
This is the autograph one too.
Yeah, autographed. What was this?
Young.
That's where Bill.
Where was this?
David.
Where was that taken?
That was in Georgia.
Where were you in Georgia?
It's Macon, Georgia,
Looks like Nicholas.
near Benning.
Look at him. Looks just like Nicholas.
That's Jim and Toshi and Louis On, the man that took over Jim's farm while Jim was incarcerated in Heart Mountain, Wyoming. And that was our wedding day. He came to our house after the wedding, and that's when the picture was taken. And Jim said before, he looks tired. Well, he was the only one that had a car. This was during the war. The war hadn't ended yet, and there was gasoline rationing at that time. And Jim had to go after the wedding cake. He had to go after the best man, Frank Inoue, down at Union Station. And no wonder Jim was tired.
What was that at?
That was in Los Angeles. We got married.
Oh, that's the reason I was
We
wondering.
got married at
How
Eagle
Louis
Rock.
On was there?
Yes.
Oh,
That was-
that's why.
That's why.
There's your mom.
And
St.
we were
George.
married in July 14th, 1945. And that's my father on the left, and that's Toshi and Jim and my mother. And my mother and father came back in January of 1945 when the war was still roaring. And this is the home they had to stay in, Dr. and Mrs. Claude Douglas's home, because the people that rented our home wouldn't move out. Nobody asked them to move out. So finally, they had to get the sheriff and evict them. And so Dr. and Mrs. Douglas offered their home for our wedding. So we had the wedding there.
Because of rock.
That's Chicago, and from the my apartment house on 28, and there's Carol down at the bottom, and Dawn, and Ruthie, and Billy Sato. May lived with us. Bill. This is Chicago.
Me was on the third floor?
They lived on the third floor.
That wasn't Fred's building.
No, that's my apartment.
We were on the second floor.
I was the janitor.
This was taken in camp, wasn't it?
These were, oh no, except
That could have been Chicago too, but
that must have, I think.
It was Chicago.
Couldn't have been.
Saw those cats in May and Ruth and
Well, that's when I got home from the 1947 January, after being away for 5 years.
Where is that?
5 years? That's after you went to Korea? And
That's after I got back from Korea.
that's taken in Hollywood, the St. George House.
Was that it?
That house across the street.
That's in your front yard?
Yeah.
That's Jeannie, daughter of Fred and the second Mary, Ito. Turns out Fred was married the first time. His first wife was also named Mary. I was 5 years old, my first permanent, and I think I started to be a good little girl. I understand before that I used to be a holy terror. My mother always said all the relatives would get mad at me because I'd go around beating up on everyone.
I don't remember that. I remember seeing her for the first time in Chicago, and she was so cute.
How old was she?
Very precocious. She was about 5.
Look at that.
Oh, that's Dorothy and Camp,
Hart Mountain.
Hart Mountain. I just wanted to show the camp and Hart Mountain and back, and I had already been to Chicago, but returned and told me to come to Chicago with the 2 children.
How old are you there? You know, when I got to Chicago after they took me, Ted met me in Chicago, and he really didn't want to recognize me as his wife because I was so dark and the kids were so dark.
Taking Tonia's apartment and her living room. This is David and Kat Sato and Shotaro Ito, Fred, and I think that's Lillian. And Tad Nagai, Dorothy, Doshindo, Tonya, May, Mrs. Moma, Jeannie, Don, Billy, Carol, and Ruth, Sato, and Mary Ito. Four brothers. Yeah, and this, I think, was taken,
This is Chicago.
wasn't it here at
Here, before the war.
Point Furman that day we had a picnic?
That's before the war.
No.
Yeah,
no.
that'd be before the war.
No. Before the war?
Yeah, that's
Just
Jim
before.
and Tom, Bill and Dave.
Seems like it.
67, 17?
You think so? Toshi. David and Toshi. They were married in Chicago.
That's a
chapel
picture.
in Chicago.
And what year was that?
1943. No, 1946. That dress, actually, I borrowed that from my sister-in-law that just got married about 6 months before that.
I think that's a previous.
And, here's another picture of Dave and Jim and Toshi. That looks like in front of Toshi's home, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh, they look so young.
That's Jim and Tad.
Was that Tom?
Tom?
Chicago. In Hollywood. That's after I'd been home a year after the war. So that's our first child, Kristen. She's 1 year old.
I remember you sending me a picture of Chris, and I was in the hospital following surgery, and when I was coming out of the anesthesia, I was talking to you, telling you what a cute baby Chris was. You weren't even here. There, I was in Chicago. You were in LA, and I was talking to you coming out of my anesthesia. The picture was so cute of Chris. Grandkids that told me
Dad
told me
and grandkids.
William, Chocado, Billy, Carol, Don, Ruth, and Jeannie. Smiling, cute Jeannie. Is that
Carol and Dawn.
Is that
Our dog.
Tiny?
Oh, and
Tiny.
Tiny.
Is the dog Tiny?
Chicago.
Such a cute dog. Carol's birthday. And
Hey. Dad, me, my mom, Frank, Hannah, and Doug.
You know
No.
it.
You in Los Angeles?
I don't know.
Who was back here?
Is it?
Yeah. Mom's memorial.
Memorial Day.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, that's Patty.
Play.
And Lillian, Frank, Toshi, and Chrissy, Jim. Anna, Ruth, Bill, May, Tats, Dorothy, John, Billy, Roger,
And Doug.
and Philip, and Doug.
That's Mrs. Mount.
Who is that?
That's right, Mrs. Mount. She was a friend of my uncle's. Turns out that my uncle on my mother's side was a houseboy for her and her husband. And they lived in Glendale, and they sort of kept in contact with us during the war. And I guess when we came back here, my mother must have got contact with her again. So that's my mother on the left, and then my father, Fred, on the right. And I'm standing in front of Mrs. Mount, Jean, Lillian, below me, and then Clyde, or Boboy.
His name was taken after her husband.
Oh, that's right, Clyde?
Clyde.
Right. Clyde was named after her, Mrs. Mount, his name was Clyde Mount.
What did he do?
They were teachers with Glendale College.
She was a principal of elementary school, and he was a teacher of high school.
And then eventually became
Was
professors
taking a
and
picture that he's not
at
there.
Glendale College.
Patty.
That's it. Roger and Philip and Patty, my first birthday. That's probably the Oish's house.
Yeah, on Orange Grove.
On Orange Grove.
Oh.
That's Lillian and Bill Ito.
1949, 48. Remember what year?
May 29.
29. Yeah.
What date?
May 29th.
You knew it.
Remember that was very.
How many years?
It's 48.
There's Grandpa and Carol and Dawn in Chicago. Dad's birthday party. There he is.
The Methodist Church in
In
Chicago.
Chicago.
Mr. Sakaizawa
Yeah.
next to him. Mrs. Moore on the other side. And can't
Is that-
identify
All
the other
church
people.
members.
How old was he?
I was probably 80, I don't know.
Reverend Cordes.
Was he in there?
I don't, which church was this? It's probably
In Chicago.
Chicago.
Was it the Catholic Church?
Not Catholic.
Oh, this was,
Families.
Party.
is that me?
Fred, Dan, Jim, Bill, and David's not there.
He was 9.
He's gone?
What year was that? Did it say?
David wasn't there.
49. 1949.
1949.
Oh, that's John and Dorothy, Shendo, and Janine, when she was a toddler. With a little top knot, because she didn't, when she was, her second birthday, she didn't have much hair until she was, after she was 2 years old. So she had this little curl on her head. And that was it. That was in San Pedro, California.
Yes, ma'am.
This is,
Oh, he was a
So
butcher,
camp,
yeah, 42.
Notice assignment for Frank. Notice of assignment to report.
That's when he had some nice steaks to eat.
He worked for $12 a month?
The camp, that was in camp.
Yeah, camp, yeah, it was a work assignment.
So he got $12 a month.
Working in the kitchen, was he?
Oh, in the hospital?
In the hospital, is that what he did?
Oh,
Says
yes,
butcher,
and-
mess
And whenever
hall?
we had birthdays, he would make, trays and trays of cake and gallons of ice cream and just pass it around our whole block.
1942.
I love that.
And this was what camp?
Jerome.
Jerome, Arkansas. What is this?
That's my birth number.
Receipt for
Mine was 49, 49.
Gila River.
29. And my mother also worked in the
Yeah,
hospital.
mine's 49.
Did he work at the store?
He was the block
He
manager.
had his own American office and I had my own,
He was a block manager.
the same block.
Now, you met him in camp?
Huh?
You met Fred in camp?
Yeah, I was in his block and he was a manager.
That's why you got 29 instead of 29.
So what did you do?
That was the top wages those days,
Yeah.
$22.
It was 12, 16, and 19.
19 is the
Oh, I thought it was
19 was
22.
the- This is a certificate showing signing up for the GI Insurance National Service Life Insurance. And what I thought would be interesting here, this is what David had taken out for the GI insurance for $10,000. And if we can pan down to the bottom, he sent this copy to the beneficiary, which was Dad, Shotaro Ito, who was in a camp. He was in a concentration camp in Rivers, Arizona, which was Gila. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Block 49?
I don't know how they numbered it.
Yeah, I was 49 too.
49,
I don't
41.
remember the number, but we're in the same block.
That David volunteered for the Army, and his father and the rest of us were behind barbed wire.
And they have his name.
Yes. Oh. Club advisor? Payroll?
Termination.
Termination notice, $16. Compliance and employment schedule.
I think $19 a time.
No, it was not.
19 stuff.
The rate of pay was 12,
Oh, you got
16,
that.
and 19 in the camps.
So what was that for?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
club advisor, which
So you
is
learned to play golf, I guess.
news to me.